So, with that being said, in my post-cardiovascular state, let us begin with Imani Rupert, who will be discussing, I believe, housing? Public policy, sorry.
Okay, that's me.
That's
I'm
you.
Nicole Sutton.
Oh, okay, all right. Close enough.
How are you? Good morning. How is everyone?
Good morning.
Do you want us to sit?
Should we sit, stand?
Tracy?
What does the videographer say?
Videographer?
Sit.
Sit? Videographer
Please.
says sit. All right.
I'm going to need to turn it
Okay.
Okay. Again, my name's Nicole Sutton, and I'm in a unique situation in that I just moved to Chicago 2 weeks ago. So I come from Hawaii, and things are a little bit different than they are here in Chicago. So we have a lot of the same social health issues that are happening in Chicago, but this event was a real eye-opener for me. So this was really a privilege for me to be part of this because I learned so much in a really short time and met some incredible young people and incredible adult allies. So I want to tell you that I come from a background 14 years in public health and youth organizing for public health issues and policy making. So I just was asked to be part of this as a facilitator to help bring ideas out from our young people on where we could go with public policy to be able to end homelessness. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the very first slide, which talks about the need for training, evaluation, and transparency. So very little is known about our young people's experience in the systems and accessing the services that are available to them. And so it's really important that we do a better job of evaluating and finding out not only what they need, but once they do access services, what is happening and how are these services working for them? Are they able to navigate? In addition to that, we need to have training for people who are providing services to our LGBTQ young people, making sure that they are culturally competent to be able to address the special needs of our young people. That goes across everything, not just service providers and social services, but also in the justice system, in the court system, making sure that judges understand the complexities of being an LGBTQ youth who is homeless. Budget. So this was something that came up. We need funding. I think everybody can agree. It needs to be something that there are dedicated funds to be able to address. Okay, increasing access. So one of the things we heard from young people is that there may be services, but they just don't make the cutoffs. We need to increase the ability for them to be able to access services. It could be the difference of making $500 or $1,000 a year more than what they do. So being able to raise that income threshold to be able to access services and housing. We heard from a lot of people that things that happen in their youth carry over into adulthood that disqualify them as young adults from being able to have housing. And that includes drug convictions, right? Anything where they've been in the justice system. Also allowing providers to be able to provide services to undocumented young people. So we heard that, you know, if a shelter is receiving federal funds, they can't offer those services to a young person who's undocumented. So that needs to change. Also, we heard from young people that they cannot access or advocate on their behalf just certain services because they need parental consent. So that's something that really needs to be looked at a bit more in depth. We have a lot of young people on their own, but they have to go back and try to get consent to be able to get critical services.
Nicole?
Yes.
In the previous slide, you talked about the income threshold that prevented them from having access.
Yes.
Can you give us examples of what that threshold looks like?
I can't, but I know that Kim and others, Vaughn can.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact numbers, but that's something in the Q&A I think that we could ask others who have with expertise to be able to explain a little bit more. Okay, there is definitely a lack of affordable housing available for young people. So this is across the board. for our young people, or not only can young people not make enough funding, which you're going to see in another slide, to be able to afford what exists, but we need to create higher thresholds again for affordable housing, and also come up with innovative strategies to create housing opportunities. So one of the examples of that was a possibility of using foreclosed houses to be able to make them accessible to organizations that want to create housing projects, programs for young people. Another is that, we heard repeatedly from young people that even if they have a job and they're making money and they want to try to sign a lease, there's a lot of discrimination because they may not have credit history. So one of the ideas was, is there a way that we can have a government guaranteed leases? Because it's something that stands between our young people having stable, consistent homes, and it's very possible to address. Okay, raising the minimum wage. We heard this. Again, young people, I work 40, 50 hours a week. I still don't have enough money for a place to live and to take care of my basic needs. We need to raise that. We also need to make the minimum wage equal for young people. Right now, young people in Illinois make 50 cents less than adults with minimum wage. That needs to be changed as soon as possible. And when it comes to working in restaurants, I think most of us have knowledge that restaurant workers make much less, and that needs to change because a lot of our young people end up in the service industry working in restaurants. We heard from our youth that they want to be able to get to school. Many of them are out of school. They're in shelters or in housing where they're far away from where they need to attend, where they're enrolled. We need to create programs that reduce or provide either reduced or free transportation. And this extends not to just being able to go to high school, but also to be able to attend college or to be able to have a job that's on the other side of the city. We heard from youth that it's extremely inconsistent when it comes to what's available to them by their age. So some services cut off at 18, some cut off at 20, other things they can access till they're 24. First of all, we need to get that even because it creates a tremendous amount of confusion about what they can qualify for. And then we need to extend that. So we heard that in New York City, they've extended it to 29. So, and it goes, we heard, one of our young people said, I need something beyond just this year. I need to know that I have support. A lot of our young people are raising children, and they need support that goes beyond just a month, a year. They need to be able to really know that they can get their lives developed and on track. Definition of homelessness. So right now, there's and I can't speak to all of the details of how we define homelessness, but there's chronic homelessness, and then there are young people that may be able to be in a shelter for a few days, and then they end up being able to go to stay with friends or family, and that creates issues in them being able to access services because they're not then defined as homeless. So we need to change how we define homelessness, and we also need to look at doubling up. That's something we heard a lot about, that if you're staying with someone else, that doesn't mean that you're homeless, and that we need to redefine all of those things to increase the availability of services. So when it comes to transgender and gender nonconforming, we need to look for and implement the best practices in the area of name change and gender markers. So we heard that, it's very difficult to do a name change as a young person, especially if you've had a criminal background, you've had something on your record. It blocks you from being able to do that, being able to move forward and take care of those things that are critical in identity and moving forward in life. Okay, increase education and communication on available resources. So many young people, there's actually a quote up on the wall somewhere from a young person who said, we have no idea what's even available. It's confusing, it's difficult to navigate. So in addition to passing policies, creating programs and funding them, we also need to fund and be sure that there's adequate information available to them on how to get those services, how to sign up. We need to remove the barriers of navigating it, especially when it comes to emergency housing funds. We know that there are services, but many young people don't know that that's available to them or how to even get signed up and start accessing. Decriminalization. So we heard about this, especially when it comes to drugs. Something happens in your teens, unless you've had an opportunity to have legal assistance to get that off your record, that stays with you, that limits your ability to get funding for school, for college, for housing. Okay? Also, we need funding for treatment. Also, we talked about the same thing with sex work, being able to decriminalize that because that stays with people. So following up on work that's already been done, again, it's really important that we're evaluating, monitoring the effect of the new Youth Vulnerability Index, and making sure that DCFS complies with the requirements of the ACLU lawsuit, that there needs to be accountability for that. Again and again, we heard about aging out, that there's no consistent way to then access services after you've aged out of a program. We need more of it. We need more services for young people that age out, ensuring that they get that support that they need. We need more transitional housing programs. Okay. We heard again, there are opportunities for healthcare, very difficult to navigate, pushing more towards the availability of universal healthcare. Again, lowering the age of consent for primary care. Improving access to mental health care. I can't tell you how much that came up. Young people talking, I attended the health sessions, and young people said, this is so much more than just about the body, this is about the spirit and the mind. We need access to mental health care. Okay, a lot of our young people are trying to go to school, trying to get into college, are in college. Some of the ideas that we had, well, what happens in school is that if you have housing in the regular school year, in the summer, often you have to leave the campus. There's not housing available, and there's not financial aid that's going to cover that housing in the summertime. And so that's something we would really like to see changed, so that we don't end up with young people who are in school and then end up homeless in the summertime because they have nowhere to go and no financial support. Also, we heard from young people that if you're in school full-time and not working full-time, you don't qualify for public housing programs. So that's another issue that needs to be. Our young people are trying to make their lives better. They're aiming high, but there's not support there for them. Also, we talked about the need for people to help young people navigate the FAFSA system. So FAFSA, anybody, I don't know recently if you've gone through the process, but it asks you a tremendous amount of questions about your parents. You have to give information about your parents' financial background, and it's really difficult to get a waiver to stating that you're actually on your own and that you're not dependent on your parents. So again, we need people who can help navigate that system, but ultimately there need to be changes in the FAFSA federal aid process. Okay, so with the Q&A, again, youth homelessness is not my absolute expertise, so I really want to pull from the expertise in the room, including Kim, Bon, and others who are here that may be able to answer questions. And the reality of this is that we don't have answers to all of the questions, right? This is a work in progress. So we can go ahead and open the floor.
And I'm not sure, are we using microphones? No? No? Okay. So no Oprah moment for me, but you still get to participate. And there's a lot of information up here. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Don't be shy, Representative.
The other thing is that you're going to hear some of these come up in some of the other areas. So policy was a bit layered, right? Because it's informed by all of the other things that we talked about. So you may not have questions right now, but once we get into some of the other areas, you might find that. Please.
We have one question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
This is more of a comment than a question.
No problem.
So I don't know how many people are familiar with McKinney-Vento, which is the policy that guarantees unhoused or unstable youth to access housing. And I know that several years ago, at least here in Illinois, that the process for college access has become much easier. There's now like something you can check off to say that you are a homeless youth, and then all that information about your parents gets waived. So you don't have to fill any of that out. That's my understanding. And then in terms of transportation, if you go to your, I know in the video, there was a homeless liaison at that high school. Every school in Chicago is supposed to have a homeless liaison. If they don't, they are in violation of McKinney-Vento, and Chicago Public Schools was sued in the early 90s for non-compliance. The Law Project, which is part of the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, they offer services and support to make sure that students know about their rights and that they can access them, and that includes transportation. So if you are, what do they call it now, a student in transitional living situation, which broadens the definition of homelessness, and that's not why it's now called STLS instead of, homeless, to recognize all the kids that are doubled up. And they are supposed to provide young people with transportation to get to and from school. Again, if they don't, they are in violation of McKinney-Vento, and the Law Project will help with that.
So that is true, that there is now a checkbox thanks to the National Network for Youth and other folks who have really been pushing. That was the College Cost Reduction Act of 2007. However, that only falls true for shelters or transitional living programs, basic centers that are funded by the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, the programs that are only funded, so like teen living programs, the night ministry, they can write the letters for young people. But for example, at UCAN, the host home program, or we're seeing Center on Halsted, the Broadway Youth Center, technically we're not allowed to write the letters for folks because we're not a funded agency. And we do anyway, sidebar. We just say for the College Cost Reduction Act.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, in the city, people are great, mostly at the city colleges and UIC. When we go out to the suburbs, so the community colleges in the suburbs and then downstate, people look at you like you are from Miami Beach, like, what are you doing here? So there needs to be education, and then we also need to expand to include drop-in centers like Broadway Youth Center, Center on Halsted, and then do education statewide. Because, for example, when we were applying for a young person to go to community college way out in the suburbs, an hour and a half outside of Chicago when they were going to move there, we had to not only provide that homeless letter, they wanted a report, a police report, saying that the mother put the young person out 4 years prior. I was like, let me tell you about something, okay?
It's illegal.
Yeah, so we got it anyway, but they made us jump through a lot of hoops. So we got into a lot of education. Boom, sorry.
Well,
No,
I-
I think
even-
it's great to know that, outside of Chicago, that it seems that there's a lot more education needed, and I'm wondering what are some, as a solution, what are some agencies that you can work with so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen?
And to piggyback off what you're saying, based upon the fact that this is what you heard over the course of 2.5 days, obviously our youth do not know all of this information. So what can we also do to piggyback off that to make sure that the people who actually need this information has this information?
Yes, hi. This is the first day that I've been here because I live far, far away. And it's hard to travel down here. But anyway.
Could you stand, please?
Sure. My name's Laura Ham, and I just got involved in the community and associated with this project, and it's great. I was homeless 30 years ago, 35 years ago, but anyway, now I am telling my age. But anyhow, my heart has always been in reaching out to the LGBT community who are homeless because of what I've been through over the last 40 years. I had just finished writing a book about my life as a trans female and so forth. And I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. And so I'm just basically just going to ask the question, where can I start? Where's the best place for me to start to help people and help everybody move forward?
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Is there a question either Bon or Kim can talk about organizations or resources that this individual can go to like today and start saying, where am I needed?
So my humble opinion, there's so many beautiful people here in the audience today that are doing creative, innovative things. Broadway Youth Center, Center on Halstead, Project Fears. There's a lot of groups, host home program at UCAN, which we're phasing out, but so you can get involved in a lot of ways. And I invite you to come talk offline with me, and I would love to talk with you about brilliant ways. The Trans Life Center in Chicago House is one, and we need volunteers.
Certainly.
Broadway Youth Center is one as well. We'd love to talk to you.
Closed mouths don't get fed. So you've opened up. I think there was a question in the back and then here.
Just a comment, you're talking about the need to spread education like towards the suburbs and outside of Chicago. The Illinois Collaboration on Youth, which is a statewide membership agency of youth serving providers, many of us whom are homeless youth service providers, meets quarterly at different parts of the state. We're always looking for people to come in and speak at our quarterly policy meetings. So if we want to get the word out there about some of this stuff to others besides in Chicago, that might be a very good venue for doing so. I can certainly get you information on how to do that.
What's the name of the organization?
Illinois Collaboration on Youth, ICOY.
Yeah.
Up to 55 West on Wacker.
Thank you.
Quarterly opportunity to do so.
We have time for two more.
Sorry, one of the questions that a lot of the trans people that I've spoken to, when we talked about sex work and decriminalizing sex work, they talk about the reason that they get into sex work, a lot of them get into sex work, is they can't find a job because no one's offering them a job. Because they're trans women, they're trans women of color, and they're stigmatized by employers. So what kind of discussions were raised about job opportunities, job training, that kind of stuff?
That's actually going to be at one of the presentations that comes up, one of the report backs is going to cover some of that.
Okay, great.
But definitely, we acknowledge that, we heard that during the summit as well.
And last question, please.
Yeah, one of the topics that intrigued me was the idea of these either loans or leases backed by federal or state government for homeless youth. I was curious if it was something that already exists or if there are other populations that are offered such loans or leases that it's worked with in the past.
Any of our practitioners have the answer to that?
I don't know that is. It was an idea that came up that was brainstormed. So that's a good question. We can find out.
Well, we were actually looking at like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, subsidized loans that people get for first-time home buyers. So there is a model for this, only this would be in the rental market.
Thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.